On a stormy night, a luxury sedan stalls in the roughest part of town. A single dad, just trying to close his tiny garage and get his little girl to her school event, steps in to help. One fast fix, no charge, just a stranger's gratitude and an umbrella in the rain. But what starts as a small act of kindness catches the attention of someone with the power to change his life forever. Before that dream can even take root, ugly prejudice, backroom deals, and a fire in the dead of night threaten to burn it all to the ground. And in the ashes lies a truth about loyalty, justice, and the fight for a community's survival. When the system is stacked against you, can one act of kindness really rewrite the ending? Or will it be the last good deed before everything is taken away? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The rain drummed against the tin roof of Carter's auto repair as Eli wiped his hands on a worn shop rack. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal filled the small garage where he'd spent countless hours keeping his neighbors' cars running. Today, though, he needed to close early. Maya's science showcase at school was too important to miss. "Almost done, sweetheart," he called to Maya, who sat at his old desk in the corner, putting final touches on her wind turbine project. The cardboard presentation board beside her was covered in careful drawings and neat handwriting. Thunder cracked overhead, making the windows rattle. Maya jumped, then giggled. "That was a big one, Dad." "Sure was." Eli smiled, checking his watch. They still had time to make it if they hurried. The storm intensified, rain now falling in heavy sheets. Through the downpour, Eli noticed headlights approaching, dim and flickering. A sleek black sedan rolled toward the garage, engine sputtering, before it died completely right outside. A woman emerged from the driver's side, rushing through the rain toward the shelter of the garage. Despite the weather, she carried herself with unmistakable authority in her tailored business suit. She glanced around at the boarded-up storefronts nearby, her expression a mix of frustration and unease. "Are you still open?" she asked, brushing water from her sleeve. "My car just died." "Was about to close up, actually," Eli said carefully. He recognized that look, the one city folks got when they ended up in this part of town by accident. "But let's take a quick look. I'm Eli Carter." "Victoria Hale," she replied, extending her hand after a slight hesitation. "I have an important meeting, and my driver called in sick. Then the GPS routed me through here, and now this." Eli nodded, already moving toward her car. "Mind popping the hood?" Victoria pressed the release, and Eli raised the hood, using his flashlight to examine the engine. The rain pattered against his back as he leaned in. "How long were the headlights dimming before it died?" he asked. "Maybe 10 minutes. Everything just started getting weaker until it stopped completely." She stood under the garage overhang, arms crossed. Eli tested a few connections, then straightened up. "Good news is, I know what's wrong. Bad news is, you've got a failed alternator and a loose connector. That's why your battery wasn't charging properly." Victoria sighed, checking her phone. "Dead too, of course. How long will repairs take, and can you even?" She glanced around the modest garage. "I can fix it," Eli said simply, used to people underestimating his capabilities. "I've got the parts in stock. Should have you back on the road in about 40 minutes. Maya appeared beside him, rain boots already on. "Dad's the best mechanic ever. He was in the Army motor pool." Victoria's expression softened slightly at Maya's earnest declaration. "The Army?" "Yes, ma'am. 8 years." Eli patted Maya's shoulder. "This is my daughter, Maya. We were actually heading to her school showcase, but we've got time to help you first." "Oh, I don't want to make you late for that," Victoria said, but Eli was already wheeling his tool cart toward her car. "We'll make it work," he assured her, grabbing what he needed. To Maya, he added, "Honey, can you get the alternator from Bay 3, the one we just got in this morning?" Maya darted off eagerly while Eli got to work, humming an old hymn under his breath, as he often did when concentrating. The rain continued its steady rhythm on the roof, as he quickly but carefully disconnected the failed alternator. Victoria watched with growing interest as Eli's skilled hands made quick work of the repair. Maya returned with the part and stayed nearby, occasionally handing him tools before he even asked for them. "You're quite good at this," Victoria observed. "Had lots of practice," Eli replied, focused on securing the new alternator. "In the Army, you learn to fix things fast and right the first time. Lives depend on it." The repair progressed smoothly as Eli worked methodically through each step. Maya explained her wind turbine project to Victoria, who listened with surprising attention, asking thoughtful questions about the design. Finally, Eli closed the hood with a solid thunk. That should do it. Let's start her up and make sure everything's running right. Victoria slid behind the wheel and turned the key. The engine purred to life, all lights burning bright and clear. Relief washed over her face as she checked the dashboard. Perfect, Eli said, satisfied. He grabbed his clipboard and quickly wrote up the invoice, hesitating before marking down only the cost of parts. Victoria emerged from the car, already reaching for her purse. What do I owe you? Parts came to $150 even, he said, handing her the invoice. That's all I'm charging today. She stared at the paper. But the labor? This is far too little. Eli shook his head. You got somewhere important to be, and we need to get to Maya's showcase. Parts cost is fine. Thunder rumbled again as Victoria studied him, clearly unused to this kind of treatment. After a moment, she pulled out her wallet and handed him her corporate credit card. While running the payment, Eli noticed Maya anxiously checking the time. They'd still make it, but it would be close. As he handed back her card, Victoria paused. Rain continued hammering the roof, but for a moment, the space between them felt quiet. She seemed to be seeing the garage bed him properly for the first time. Here, Eli said, reaching for his umbrella, his only one, hanging by the door. Take this. Stay dry for your meeting. Victoria accepted it slowly, something shifting in her expression. Thank you, Mr. Carter. You've been extraordinarily kind. Maya tugged at Eli's sleeve. Dad, we should go. Right you are, sweetheart. He turned back to Victoria. Drive safe, Miss Hale. As they prepared to leave, Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. Wait, she said, holding it out to Eli. I have a proposition for you. Under the hood, Eli's hands moved with practiced efficiency, his flashlight beam catching the telltale signs of trouble. The alternator's connections had worked loose, and one of the mounting brackets showed stress fatigue, nothing he hadn't fixed 100 times before. Victoria paced near the garage entrance, repeatedly checking her phone. No signal at all now, she muttered, frowning at the dark screen. Power's probably out in patches from the storm, Eli explained, already reaching for his toolbox. Maya, honey, can you grab me the 10mm socket? Maya hopped up from her desk, pigtails bouncing. She knew her father's tools as well as her own colored pencils. The short one or the long one? Short one this time. He winked at her. And maybe that new connector from the top drawer? Victoria watched their easy interaction, her tense shoulders relaxing slightly. Maya skipped over with the requested items, handling them with surprising care for a 9-year-old. You're lucky, Ms. Hale, Maya said matter-of-factly. Dad's the best mechanic in town. He even fixed Pastor Jim's car when nobody else could figure out what was wrong with it. Eli ducked his head, focusing on the repair. Maya likes to talk me up, he said softly. But this is a straightforward fix. Shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Thunder rolled again as he worked, the rain creating a steady rhythm on the roof. Maya returned to her project but kept glancing over, clearly interested in the repair. Victoria's eyes darted between the gathering darkness outside and her dead phone, then around the garage's worn but meticulously organized interior. You've been here long? She asked, trying to mask her unease with polite conversation. Going on 15 years. Eli replied, his voice slightly muffled as he leaned further under the hood. Started right after my army service. The neighborhood's changed some, but good people still live here. He straightened up, wiping his hands. Maya, could you pass me that electrical tape? When she brought it over, he added, and maybe show Miss Hale your science project while I finish up, might help pass the time? Maya's face lit up. Want to see my wind turbine? I made it from recycled parts Dad helped me find in the shop. Victoria found herself drawn into Maya's enthusiasm. The girl pulled her over to the desk, explaining how she'd adapted computer fan blades and built a simple generator. Her technical understanding was impressive for her age. You're an engineer in the making, Victoria commented, genuine admiration in her voice. That's what I want to be, Maya beamed. Dad says I get my smarts from my mom. She was a nurse, but she was really good at fixing things too. A shadow passed over Eli's face at the mention of his late wife, but his hands never faltered in their work. He made a final adjustment, then closed the hood with a solid thunk. That should do it, he announced, moving to the driver's side. The engine turned over immediately, purring smoothly. New connector, tighten mounting bracket, and check the belt while I was in there. You shouldn't have any more trouble. Victoria reached for her purse. "What do I owe you? And please, let me add something extra for taking you away from closing up." Eli shook his head. "Parts were $38 even. That's all. But surely your time." "Ma'am, you've got somewhere to be," he said simply. "And we've got a science showcase to get to." He glanced at the rain still coming down. "Here, take my umbrella for the walk to your car. It's not much, but it'll keep you dry." Victoria stared at him, clearly unused to this kind of treatment. Thank you. At least take my card. My company always needs reliable mechanics." She dug in her purse, producing a sleek business card. Eli accepted it with slightly greasy fingers, tucking it into his shirt pocket without really looking at it. "Much obliged. Now, you better get going before the storm picks up again." Maya was already pulling on her rain boots, gathering up her project materials. "Dad, we're gonna be late." "Comin', sweetheart." Eli handed Victoria his umbrella, a sturdy black one with a wooden handle. "Just drop it at the coffee shop next door when you're done. Mrs. Chin will hold it for me." Victoria took the umbrella, still seeming slightly bewildered by the entire interaction. She watched as Eli quickly tidied his tools, then helped Maya wrap her project in plastic against the rain. "Really, Mr. Carter, I can't thank you enough," she said as they all moved toward the door. "Just doing my job, ma'am." He ushered Maya out, then turned to lock up the garage. The security gate rolled down with a rattling sound that barely carried over the storm. "Come on, Dad." Maya was already splashing in a puddle, her project held high above her head. "Careful with that turbine," Eli called, pocketing his keys. He gave Victoria a final nod before jogging after his daughter, both of them disappearing into the rain-swept evening. The school gymnasium hummed with excited chatter as parents and students crowded around folding tables laden with science projects. Construction paper, posters, and carefully crafted displays filled every available space, while proud families snapped photos with their phone. Maya Carter stood at her assigned spot, carefully arranging the components of her wind turbine. Her small hands adjusted each piece with precision, making sure the cardboard base sat perfectly level on the scratched gym floor. The project wasn't the fanciest in the room. Some kids had store-bought kits with blinking lights and digital readouts, but Maya had built hers entirely from recycled materials she'd collected around the garage. "Is everything set up okay, sweetie?" Eli asked, crouching down beside her. His work shirt still carried traces of grease despite his best efforts to clean up. "Almost," Maya said, her tongue poking out slightly as she concentrated on positioning the turbine blades. "I just need to plug it in, and then the wind will make the lights work." Eli helped her connect the power cord to the nearest outlet. They'd tested it dozens of times at home, and Maya had explained the science behind it to him until he could recite it back. The little LED lights she'd salvaged from old Christmas decorations were supposed to illuminate when the turbine spun, demonstrating how wind power could generate electricity. "Ready?" Maya asked, reaching for the small fan they'd brought to simulate wind. Eli nodded, and Maya flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights in their corner of the gym flickered once, twice, and went dark with a soft pop. "Oh no," Maya whispered, her face falling. Other parents and children turned to look as a section of the gymnasium lost power. Maya's shoulders slumped, and Eli could see tears forming in her eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said quickly, giving her shoulder a squeeze. "Maybe it's just the circuit breaker. We can." "Excuse me," a familiar voice called out. "I believe this belongs to you." They turned to see Victoria Hale walking toward them, Eli's borrowed umbrella in hand. She was still in her business suit but had somehow managed to look completely put together despite the rain. Her heels clicked against the gym floor as she approached. "Miss Hale?" Maya's eyes widened in surprise. Victoria smiled warmly. "I wanted to return this and say thank you again for the repair." She glanced at the darkened project. "Having some technical difficulties?" Maya nodded sadly. "The power went out. Now no one will be able to see how wind energy can light up a whole house." "Wind energy?" Victoria's eyes lit up with interest. She set down her leather briefcase and knelt to examine Maya's project. "You know, I think I might have something that could help." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek black device about the size of a paperback book. "This is a prototype battery we're developing for our electric vehicle program. It's completely portable and holds quite a charge." Maya's eyes grew even wider. "Really? You'd let me use it?" "Of course. Here, let me show you how it works." Victoria knelt beside Maya, their heads bent together over the project. She pointed out the connection ports and explained how to regulate the power flow, speaking to Maya not as a child but as a fellow engineer. Eli watched in amazement as his daughter absorbed every word, asking intelligent questions that made Victoria smile with approval. Together, they carefully connected the battery to Maya's turbine setup. "Okay," Victoria said, sitting back on her heels. "Try it now." Maya switched on the fan, and this time the turbine blades began to spin smoothly. One by one, the LED lights flickered to life, creating a warm glow that illuminated her carefully drawn diagram of a neighborhood powered by wind energy. "It works!" Maya bounced on her toes, clapping her hands. "Look, Dad, it really works!" Other families began gathering around, drawn by Maya's excitement and the working display. Parents murmured appreciatively as Maya launched into her prepared presentation, explaining how wind power could help communities save money and protect the environment. "That's quite an impressive young engineer you're raising," Victoria said quietly to Eli as they watched Maya gesture enthusiastically to her audience. "She gets her brains from her mother," Eli replied softly, "and her determination from, well, probably her mother too." Mrs. Thompson, Maya's science teacher, worked her way through the crowd with her phone raised. "This is wonderful. Would you mind if I took a picture for the school's social media? It's not every day we have a CEO helping one of our students." Maya beamed, standing proudly beside her project. Victoria moved to join her, and after a moment's hesitation, reached out to include Eli in the photo as well. The three of them gathered around the gently spinning turbine, its lights casting a warm glow on their faces. "Perfect," Mrs. Thompson said, tapping at her phone. "I'll caption it. CEO helps students save her project. This is exactly the kind of community involvement we love to see." Eli caught Victoria's eye over Maya's head, and they shared a smile, genuine, warm, and completely unexpected. In that moment, they weren't a corporate executive and a small-town mechanic, but simply two people brought together by a child's dream of making the world a little bit better. The storm clouds had finally broken, leaving behind puddles that reflected the emerging stars. Outside the school gymnasium, the air felt fresh and clean, carrying the sweet scent of rain-soaked earth. Eli Carter walked beside Victoria Hale, their footsteps echoing on the wet pavement as they headed toward the parking lot where her sedan waited. "I really can't thank you enough," Victoria said, her heels clicking steadily beside Eli's work boots. "First the car, and then that battery for Maya's project. It worked out perfectly." "Maya did all the hard work," Eli replied, ducking his head slightly. "She's been planning that turbine for weeks. Nearly drove me crazy explaining all the physics behind it." Victoria smiled, her professional demeanor softening. "She's quite remarkable. The way she understood exactly how to connect that prototype battery, most adults wouldn't have figured that out so quickly." They reached Victoria's car, its black paint now gleaming under the parking lot lights. Eli did a quick visual check out of habit, making sure the alternator repair was holding steady. "Mr. Carter," Victoria said, turning to face him. Her expression had shifted to something more businesslike, but her eyes remained warm. "I'd like to make you a proposition." Eli tensed slightly, years of experience making him wary of opportunities that sounded too good to be true. "Ma'am? Hale Dynamics has a fleet of delivery vans that service this region. We currently contract out all our maintenance work, but I'm not entirely satisfied with our current arrangement." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, offering it to him. "I'd like to start with a pilot program. Just a few vans at first. See how it goes." Eli took the card carefully, reading the embossed letters. "Victoria Hale, CEO." His throat felt dry. That's a mighty big opportunity, Miss Hale." "It's a small start," she corrected gently. 3 vans, regular maintenance and repairs. If it works out, we can discuss expanding the arrangement." She glanced around at the modest neighborhood surrounding the school. "I've learned to trust actions over appearances, Mr. Carter. You did quality work today, and you did it with integrity." Eli turned the card over in his hands, thinking of the mortgage on the garage, of Maya's college fund that was still too empty, of the 2 local boys who kept asking if he had any apprentice positions available. "I'll email you the details tomorrow," Victoria continued. "Take some time to look them over. We can set up a proper meeting next week to discuss terms." "I appreciate the offer," Eli said slowly, "but I should be upfront. My shop isn't fancy. No computerized diagnostic systems or automated lifts. Just tools, experience, and honest work." Victoria extended her hand. That's exactly what I'm interested in, Mr. Carter. Eli shook her hand, noting how his calloused palm dwarfed her manicured fingers. Thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for helping a stranger in the rain, she replied with a small smile. She opened her car door, then paused. And Mr. Carter? Maya's project really was impressive. You should be proud. Eli watched the sedan pull away, its taillights disappearing around the corner. The business card felt heavy in his pocket as he walked to his truck where Maya waited, clutching her wind turbine carefully. The drive home was quiet, Maya half asleep in the passenger seat after all the excitement. Their small house welcomed them with familiar creaks and shadows, the porch light casting a warm glow across the welcome mat Tasha had picked out years ago. While Eli heated up leftover casserole from Sunday's church potluck, Maya disappeared into her room. He heard the familiar sound of her rummaging through her desk drawer, where she kept her collection of sticky notes. After they ate, Eli found himself standing in Maya's doorway, watching as she carefully pressed a new note onto what she called her prayer wall, a collection of colorful papers that covered one side of her room. Each one held a prayer request written in her neat childhood handwriting. This new note, bright yellow against the pale blue wall, read simply, "A safe garage for Dad." Eli stared at those words, his heart squeezing in his chest. The business card seemed to burn in his pocket, and he found himself wondering if maybe, just maybe, this was an answer to some of those prayers his daughter had been faithfully posting on her wall. Maya looked up at him with Tasha's eyes, full of hope and determination. "God's gonna take care of us, Dad," she said with the simple conviction of a child, just like Mom always said he would. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of Eli's garage, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal hung in the air as he settled into the worn chair behind his small desk. His ancient computer hummed to life, the fan whirring like it needed its own mechanic. Eli's fingers drummed against the wooden desk as he waited for his email to load. The events of yesterday still felt surreal. The broken-down luxury car, the school showcase, and especially Victoria Hale's unexpected offer. Part of him wondered if it had all been a dream. The inbox chimed. There, at the top, sat an email from Victoria Hale herself. Eli's heart skipped a beat as he clicked it open. "Dear Mr. Carter," he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. "As discussed, attached, please find the preliminary contract documents for our pilot program." He leaned back in his chair, letting out a long breath. She'd actually followed through. The attachment contained pages of legal language about maintenance schedules, payment terms, and service requirements. It looked real, more real than anything that had come his way since Tasha passed. "This could change everything," he muttered, reaching for his ancient printer. The machine protested with a series of clicks and whirs as it slowly began spitting out pages. The bell above the garage door chimed. Eli looked up to see a man in a crisp city uniform stepping inside, a clipboard tucked under one arm and a stack of papers in his hand. "Morning," the man said, his tone professionally neutral. "Building code enforcement. Just need to post a notice." He moved toward the front door without waiting for a response. Eli stood, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. "Notice? What kind of notice?" The man was already pulling out a stapler, efficiently attaching a bright yellow paper to the door. "Standard zoning notification. This area has been designated for revitalization under City Ordinance 47B. Revitalization? Eli's mouth went dry. He stepped closer, reading the bold text at the top of the notice. Notice of proposed development and potential displacement. The official checked his clipboard. Your business falls within the affected zone. The notice outlines the timeline and your options. He spoke with the detached tone of someone who delivered this news too many times to count. You'll have 90 days from today to either relocate or submit an appeal. Eli's stomach clenched as he scanned the document. Words jumped out at him. Urban renewal, commercial redevelopment, mandatory compliance. The morning sunshine suddenly felt cold on his skin. This is my property, he said, his voice rough. Been here 15 years. The official paused, showing a flicker of sympathy. You'll want to read through the whole packet. There's information about relocation assistance and appeal procedures. He handed Eli a thick envelope. Good day, sir. The bell chimed again as the man left, leaving Eli alone with the notice glaring at him from his door. Behind him, the printer continued its steady rhythm, spitting out Victoria's contract, a promise of opportunity that now felt like cruel timing. He spent the rest of the day working on cars, trying to lose himself in the familiar rhythms of repairs and maintenance. But his eyes kept drifting to that yellow paper, its edges curling slightly in the afternoon breeze that snuck through the door's weather stripping. Mrs. Greer brought her old Buick in for its regular oil change, and he could barely focus on their usual friendly chat. Mr. Washington stopped by to ask about a rattling noise in his pickup, but Eli's mind kept wandering to calculations. How much it would cost to move, where he could go, whether he could afford to fight this. The sun was setting when he finally finished his last job of the day. The garage grew quiet, except for the soft ticking of cooling engines and the distant sound of traffic. Eli stood in the doorway, staring at the notice. In the dying light, its yellow color seemed to mock him, bright against the worn paint of his door. His hand shook slightly as he reached for his keys. The familiar routine of closing up felt different tonight. Checking the tools, turning off the lights, setting the old security system. Each action reminded him that soon, this might not be his place anymore. As he stepped outside and turned to lock up, the evening wind caught the notice, making it flutter like a yellow flag of surrender. Eli's shoulders slumped as he secured the deadbolt, the click echoing in the empty street. The notice continued its restless dance in the wind as he walked away, each flutter a reminder of how quickly dreams could turn to dust. The Saturday morning sun beat down on the garage lot, where dozens of neighbors had gathered, armed with paintbrushes, cleaning supplies, and enough food to feed an army. The air smelled of barbecue smoke and fresh paint, mixing with the lingering scent of motor oil from the garage. Deacon Ruth Alvarez directed traffic from her folding chair, a paper plate of Mrs. Greer's famous potato salad balanced on her lap. A little more blue on that cloud section. She called out to the teenagers working on the mural. Remember, we're restoring it exactly as it was. The mural stretched across the garage's side wall, a tribute to local heroes who'd shaped their community. At its center stood Tasha Carter in her nurse's scrubs, surrounded by other figures who'd left their mark on the neighborhood. Mrs. Greer shuffled between small groups, her cane tapping against the concrete as she shared stories about each person depicted in the mural. "That's Dr. Wilson there," she explained to a young boy. "Delivered half the babies in this neighborhood, including your mama." Eli worked steadily, replacing old security cameras with new ones donated by the church. His t-shirt was already soaked with sweat, but he couldn't stop smiling. Maya darted between helper groups, delivering cold water bottles from a cooler and offering encouragement to everyone working. "Looking good, folks," Eli called out, climbing down his ladder. "Those cameras should help with our compliance requirements." A sleek silver car pulled up quietly across the street. Victoria Hale stepped out, dressed casually in jeans and a blouse, so different from her usual corporate attire. She hung back, watching the scene unfold before her. Deacon Ruth spotted her first. "Well, look who's here," she said, but kept her voice low, sensing Victoria's desire to observe without drawing attention. Victoria made her way toward the garage entrance, slipping inside while the community celebrated outside. The interior was cool and dim compared to the bright sunshine. She took in the familiar sight of tools and equipment, all meticulously organized despite the building's age. That's when she saw it, the prayer wall. Dozens of colorful sticky notes covered a section of wall near Eli's desk, each one written in Maya's careful child's handwriting. Victoria stepped closer, reading them one by one. "Please help Mrs. Johnson's arthritis. Thank you for Daddy's smile today. Help the teenagers who need jobs. Keep our neighborhood together." Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she read the note in the center. "A safe garage for Dad." The simple words carried the weight of a child's complete faith and fear. Without quite knowing why, she carefully peeled the note off the wall and slipped it into her pocket. Outside, the festivities continued. Someone had started playing music from a portable speaker, old soul classics that had several people dancing as they worked. Eli's laugh carried through the open door as he helped serve barbecue to a line of neighbors. Mrs. Greer appeared beside Victoria, making her jump slightly. "Quite a difference from your boardroom, isn't it?" the older woman asked, her keen eyes missing nothing. "Yes," Victoria admitted. "It's alive here." Mrs. Greer nodded. "That's because it's more than just a business. This garage is a heart. Take it away, and a piece of this community dies with it." Victoria watched as Maya ran up to her father with a paintbrush, blue paint somehow smeared across her forehead. Eli wiped it away with his thumb, both of them laughing. The mural behind them was nearly finished, Tasha's painted eyes seeming to watch over them all. The zoning board doesn't see that, Victoria said quietly. No, Mrs. Grier agreed. They see numbers on paper, property values, progress. She spoke the last word like it tasted bitter. But you see it now, don't you? Victoria nodded, her throat tight. She watched Deacon Ruth lead a prayer over the food, watched how naturally everyone joined hands, young and old, all backgrounds together. Eli stood in their midst, belongingness radiating from him like light. She turned to leave, her designer shoes crunching on the gravel lot. At her car, Victoria paused and looked back one last time. Eli was now arm wrestling with one of the teenage volunteers, while others cheered them on. The painted figures in the mural seemed to smile down at the scene. Her hand brushed against the sticky note in her pocket. In her world of quarterly reports and shareholder meetings, such simple prayers had no place. Yet here, in this lot with its mismatched chairs and paper plates, those prayers felt more real than any corporate mission statement she'd ever written. Victoria slid into her car, the leather seats a stark contrast to the plastic folding chairs outside. Through her windshield, she could see everything her world of high finance labeled as insufficient or high risk, and for the first time, those labels felt completely wrong. Victoria Hale stood at the head of the mahogany conference table, her presentation slides glowing behind her. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hale Dynamics' executive boardroom, casting long shadows across the plush carpet. As you can see from the proposal, Victoria gestured to the screen, Carter's Automotive Services has an excellent track record of reliable repairs. Their response times are consistently under industry standard, and the initial assessment of their facility shows they can handle our local fleet requirements. She clicked to the next slide, showing pictures of Eli's garage. The images had been taken after Saturday's cleanup, fresh paint, new security cameras, and a welcoming facade that spoke of care and community pride. Owen Briggs shifted in his leather chair, absently adjusting his silk tie. His perfectly pressed suit and carefully styled silver hair projected an image of corporate authority. He cleared his throat, a sound Victoria had learned to recognize as trouble brewing. If I may, Owen's voice carried that particular tone of polite concern that always preceded opposition. I have some reservations about this proposal. He opened a leather portfolio, pulling out several carefully arranged documents. The location presents significant security concerns. He continued, spreading the papers in front of him. Our risk assessment team has flagged several incidents in that zip code over the past year. He slid a crime statistics report across the table. Victoria kept her expression neutral, though her jaw tightened slightly. Those statistics are for the entire district, Owen. The immediate area around Carter's Automotive has shown steady improvement, particularly with recent community initiatives. Nevertheless, Owen pressed, his fingers drumming lightly on the table, we have to consider our responsibility to our drivers and our equipment. The current security measures at this establishment seem rather basic compared to our usual vendors. Other board members began flipping through the packets Owen had distributed. Victoria noticed several frowns forming as they reviewed the carefully curated data. Mr. Carter has installed new security systems. Victoria countered, clicking to show detailed photos of the upgrades. The cameras are top of line, and he's implementing all our recommended safety protocols. With all due respect, Owen leaned forward, his voice taking on an air of practiced patience. We're talking about millions of dollars worth of fleet vehicles. Our shareholders expect us to maintain certain standards. He pulled another document from his portfolio. I took the liberty of reaching out to Briggs Automotive Services. They're a regional chain with an established track record of corporate fleet management. Victoria felt her temperature rising but kept her voice steady. Briggs charges nearly double the standard rate, and their customer satisfaction scores are mediocre at best. But they have a proven system, Owen argued, now displaying his own slides on the screen. Digital scheduling, standardized pricing, comprehensive insurance coverage. He paused meaningfully. And their facilities are in more appropriate areas. The coded language hung in the air like smoke. Victoria watched several board members nodding along, and her frustration grew. Let's be clear about what we're really discussing, Victoria said, her tone firm. Carter's Automotive offers superior service at competitive rates. They've already demonstrated their capability and commitment when they serviced my vehicle last week. The only real objection seems to be their zip code, and I would remind everyone of our company's stated commitment to community investment and diversity in our vendor relationships. Owen's smile remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened. No one is questioning our commitment to diversity, Victoria. We simply need to ensure our partners meet certain professional standards. He distributed another set of documents. These liability projections suggest significant risk exposure if we proceed with an unproven vendor in that location. The boardroom grew quiet as members reviewed the new numbers. Victoria recognized Owen's strategy, death by data, each carefully selected statistic, building a wall of doubt. I propose we table this discussion, Owen suggested smoothly, until we can complete a more thorough evaluation. In the meantime, I've arranged for Briggs Automotive to present their proposal next week. They have a new app-based system that I think you'll find quite impressive. Victoria gathered her materials, her movements deliberate and controlled. I'll have our legal team review their complete insurance documentation and security certificates. We should apply the same scrutiny to all potential vendors. The meeting adjourned with murmured agreements and shuffling papers. As Victoria packed up her laptop, she noticed Owen lingering by the door, typing on his phone with a satisfied expression. Back in her office, Victoria's computer chimed with a new email. Owen's name appeared in her inbox, the subject line reading, "Vendor consideration, follow up." She opened the message. "Victoria, following our discussion, I've attached Briggs Automotive's full proposal for your review. Their CEO is available to meet tomorrow morning. I strongly encourage you to consider their more established operation as a better fit for our corporate needs. Remember, we have a responsibility to our shareholders to minimize risk and maintain appropriate professional standards. Best regards, Owen." The safety meeting. The conference room buzzed with low chatter as Victoria settled into her chair at the monthly driver safety meeting. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of coffee drifted from a corner table lined with paper cups and pastries. She opened her laptop, but her mind kept drifting to the earlier board meeting and Owen's thinly veiled dismissal of Eli's garage. Around the oval table sat 24 of Hale Dynamics' most experienced drivers, their company polos and badges marking them as the backbone of the operation. These weren't executives in suits. These were the men and women who kept their fleet moving day and night, rain or shine. Thomas Jenkins, their head of driver operations, stood at the whiteboard reviewing accident statistics and safety protocols. Victoria usually paid close attention, but today she found herself studying the faces of her employees instead. Many of them had been with the company for years, some even decades. "And that brings us to vehicle maintenance," Thomas said, clicking to a new slide. "We've had some concerns about response times from our current service providers." A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Victoria straightened in her chair, suddenly alert. "Anyone want to share their experiences?" Thomas asked, marker poised over the whiteboard. In the back corner, Harold Wilson raised his hand. He was one of their oldest drivers, a grandfather figure with kind eyes and silver hair who'd been with Hale Dynamics for 15 years. Victoria remembered signing his service award certificate herself. "I've got something to say about maintenance," Harold said, his voice carrying the gentle weight of experience. He sat up straighter in his chair, adjusting his glasses. "Not about our current providers, but about a mechanic who helped me out last winter. Saved my hide, if I'm being honest." The room grew quiet. Victoria's pen hovered over her notepad. "It was during that big snowstorm in January," Harold continued. "You remember the one? Must have been 10 inches on the ground. I was making my last delivery of the day to the medical center on Oak Street when my van started making this awful noise. Then the engine just died." He paused, shaking his head at the memory. "It was getting dark, temperature dropping fast. I called our service provider, but they said it'd be at least 3 hours before they could get someone out there. I was worried sick about those medical supplies in the back." Victoria leaned forward slightly, a familiar feeling stirring in her chest. "That's when this mechanic, Eli Carter's his name, he came out of his garage across the street. Didn't even have to ask for help. He just walked right over in that heavy snow, tools in hand." Harold's face softened with the memory. "Spent 2 hours working on that van in the freezing cold. Wouldn't quit until he got it running." Several heads nodded around the table. A woman 2 seats down, Marie, Victoria remembered, spoke up. "Carter's Automotive? I know that place. He helped me too, about 6 months ago. Battery died while I was delivering to the clinic. He had me back on the road in 30 minutes. But that's not even the best part," Harold continued, his voice warming. "When he finally got my van started, he insisted on following me all the way home in his own truck. Said he wanted to make sure I made it safe, given the weather. Must have been another hour of his time, just trailing behind me through those snowy streets. Victoria's pen moved across her notepad, capturing every detail. Her earlier frustration with Owen's dismissal crystallized into something sharper, more determined. Wouldn't take any payment either, Harold added, shaking his head in admiration. Said it was just the right thing to do. You don't find many people like that anymore. Another driver, James, nodded vigorously. My cousin had his car fixed there last month. Said Carter treated him like family, explained everything he was doing, even showed him how to spot the problem if it happened again. More voices joined in, sharing similar stories. Victoria sat back, listening as driver after driver spoke about Eli's integrity, his skill, his dedication to helping people regardless of circumstances. Thomas tried to steer the conversation back to the official agenda, but Victoria barely heard him. She was too busy thinking about the stark contrast between what she'd heard in the boardroom this morning and what she was hearing now. Owen's statistics and risk assessments suddenly seemed hollow compared to these real experiences, these human stories. The meeting continued, but Victoria's decision was already made. She thought about Maya's wind turbine project, about Eli's refused payment, about Harold standing in the snow. She thought about the prayer wall in the garage and the fresh paint covering old scars on the building's walls. She pulled out her phone and began typing a message to her assistant. Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Full attendance required. The rest of the safety meeting passed in a blur of protocols and procedures, but Victoria's mind was already mapping out her strategy. Owen's polished presentations and corporate metrics weren't going to win this one. Not against the power of real people telling real stories about a man who understood that business was about more than just bottom lines. As the meeting wrapped up, Harold approached her, his weathered hands gripping his coffee cup. Ms. Hale, I hope I didn't speak out of turn about Mr. Carter. Just felt like somebody should know what kind of person he is. Victoria smiled, warmth reaching her eyes. No, Mr. Wilson, you spoke exactly when you needed to. She gathered her things, her movements filled with fresh purpose. Thank you for sharing your story. It matters more than you know. The morning sun streamed through the garage's windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Eli wiped his hands on a shop rag, his phone buzzing in his pocket. When he saw Victoria's name on the screen, his heart skipped a beat. Mr. Carter? Victoria's voice carried a warmth he hadn't heard before. I have some news. Eli leaned against his workbench, trying to keep his voice steady. Good morning, Ms. Hale. The board just approved the pilot program. 90 days, starting next week. We'll have the contracts ready tomorrow. Eli closed his eyes, relief washing over him like a cool breeze. Thank you, he managed. I appreciate the chance. You earned it, Victoria said firmly. There's an advance coming your way for equipment upgrades. And Eli? This is just the beginning. After hanging up, Eli stood there for a moment. The familiar sense of oil and metal surrounding him. Through the office window, he could see Maya at her homework table, colored pencils scattered around her as she worked on something. Maya, he called out. Come here, baby girl. I've got news. She bounced into the garage, pigtails swinging. Did Miss Victoria call? Did we get it? He scooped her up in a hug, not caring about the grease on his coveralls. We sure did. Maya squealed with delight. Can I design the logo now? Please? First things first, Eli said, setting her down. We need to make some calls. That afternoon, Eli sat with Deacon Ruth in the church office, reviewing applications from young people in the congregation who needed work. Two names stood out. Marcus Johnson and Deshaun Williams, both 19 and eager to learn a trade. They're good boys, Ruth said, her weathered hands smoothing the papers. Just need someone to give them a chance. Eli nodded, remembering his own start as a young army mechanic. Tell them to come by tomorrow morning. We'll start with the basics. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Marcus and Deshaun proved quick learners, their enthusiasm infectious as they organized tools and learned the shop's layout. Maya spent hours at her desk, drawing design after design for the new logo. Her tongue stuck out in concentration. The advance from Hale Dynamics arrived, allowing Eli to order new diagnostic equipment and replace some aging tools. Each delivery felt like Christmas morning, with Maya insisting on helping to unpack everything and find it a proper home. Dad, look, she called one afternoon, holding up her final logo design. It featured a stylized wrench forming the C in Carter, with rays of light behind it like a rising sun. Do you like it? Eli studied the drawing, pride swelling in his chest. It's perfect, baby. Just perfect. The local news caught wind of the story through social media. A reporter and cameraman showed up one morning, wanting to cover what they called the kindness contract. Eli tried to deflect the attention, but Maya charmed them with her detailed explanation of how she designed the logo. And see, the light means hope, she told the reporter, pointing to her drawing, because that's what Dad gives people when he fixes their cars. The story aired that evening, showing Eli working alongside his new apprentices, Maya's logo prominently displayed. The reporter emphasized how a chance encounter in the rain had led to this opportunity, dubbing it a modern-day parable about the rewards of kindness. What happened next surprised everyone. People started showing up at the garage, not with cars to fix, but with small gifts and donations. Mrs. Chin from the corner store brought homemade dumplings. The hardware store owner dropped off a box of supplies, just because. An envelope arrived with a check from an anonymous donor, marked simply, "For tools." Marcus and Deshawn stayed late that evening, helping to organize the new equipment. They moved with growing confidence, already picking up Eli's habits of keeping everything in its place. "Y'all head on home," Eli told them as the sun began to set. "We've got a big day tomorrow." After they left, Eli walked through the garage, running his hand along the new toolboxes. Maya's logo had been painted on the wall, still drying, the colors rich and warm in the evening light. The diagnostic computer hummed softly in the corner, its screen glowing with promise. He started his nightly closing routine, checking locks and turning off machines. A familiar tune came to his lips. "Amazing Grace," his mother's favorite hymn. The words felt particularly fitting tonight. The shop lights cast a gentle glow through the windows as he worked, and for the first time in years, Eli felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope, as bright and clear as Maya's rising sun logo. Each tool he put away, each surface he wiped down, felt like another small step towards something bigger than himself. The garage wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to Marcus and Deshawn, to Maya's dreams, to a community that believed in second chances. Eli hummed the last verse as he stood in the doorway, taking one final look around. The shop seemed to shine with new possibility, everything in its place, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Bridges of understanding. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garage floor as Victoria's heels clicked against the concrete. She carried a leather portfolio filled with contracts, her usual corporate polish somehow softer today. Eli looked up from the engine he was showing Marcus how to diagnose, wiping his hands on a shop rack. "Ms. Hale," he said with a nod. "Wasn't expecting you today." "Please, call me Victoria," she smiled, glancing at Marcus. "I thought I'd bring these by personally. The final contracts." Marcus straightened up, suddenly conscious of his oil-stained uniform. "I'll go help Deshawn with that inventory count, Mr. Carter." Once Marcus had disappeared into the storage area, Victoria set her portfolio on a clean workbench. "You've made amazing progress already. The place looks different." "Coffee?" Eli gestured toward his small office. "Maya insisted we get one of those fancy pod machines with the advance, said it would make the place more professional." Victoria laughed, following him into the office. "Smart girl." The office was modest but tidy, with Maya's drawings pinned to a corkboard and a small coffee station in the corner. Eli pulled two mismatched mugs from a cabinet while the machine hummed to life. "Cream? Sugar?" he asked. "Black is fine." Victoria settled into one of the chairs, her designer suit looking out of place against the worn furniture. "You know, my father would have loved this place." Eli handed her a mug and sat down behind his desk. "Oh? He was a machinist," she said, running her finger along the mug's rim. 40 years at the same factory. I used to love visiting him at work, the smell of metal and oil, the sound of tools clicking." She paused, taking a sip. "I haven't thought about that in years." "What happened to him?" "Retired 5 years ago. Lives in Florida now." Victoria's voice carried a hint of regret. "I don't visit as often as I should. Somewhere along the way, I think I started being embarrassed by where I came from. Stupid, really." Eli nodded slowly. "We all get lost sometimes. After Tasha died, I nearly sold this place. Couldn't bear looking at the tools we'd bought together, the plans we'd made." Victoria set her mug down carefully. "Maya's mother?" "Yeah." Eli's eyes drifted to a small photo on his desk. A woman in scrubs, her smile bright and confident. She was a nurse at County General. Had this way of making everyone feel cared for, you know? During the big flood 3 years ago, she organized a makeshift clinic right here in the garage. worked 36 hours straight. Victoria's eyes widened. The flood clinic? My mother was treated there. She'd fallen trying to save some photos from our old house. Her voice trailed off as she studied the photograph more closely. Wait, I remember her. Your wife. She sang hymns while she worked, kept everyone calm. That was Tasha. Eli's voice grew soft. She always said music was God's medicine. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the distant sounds of Marcus and Deshawn's laughter drifting in from the storage room. Would you show me the mural? Victoria asked suddenly. I've seen it from the street, but… Eli stood, gesturing for her to follow. They walked out the side door to where the large mural covered the garage's exterior wall. Local heroes painted in vibrant colors, teachers, pastors, first responders, and there in the center, Tasha, in her scrubs, surrounded by people seeking help during the flood. Victoria stepped closer, touching the wall gently. She wrapped my mother's ankle, insisted on calling me personally to explain the care instructions, even though she must have been exhausted. She turned to Eli. I had no idea she was your wife. This town gets smaller every day, Eli finished. They stood there, studying the mural as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. When Victoria finally extended her hand, it wasn't the crisp business handshake from their first meeting. This was warmer, more real. Thank you for the coffee, Eli, she said, and for reminding me where I come from. Eli shook her hand, noticing how the corporate mask had slipped away, revealing something more genuine underneath. Thank you for giving us a chance. As Victoria walked to her car, her heels clicking a steady rhythm, Eli remained by the mural, his hand resting near Tasha's painted face. Some days, he thought, the world had a way of drawing circles around people, connecting dots they never knew existed. The town hall's banquet room glowed with warm light from crystal chandeliers, a sharp contrast to its usual fluorescent practicality. Round tables draped in white cloth filled the space, each decorated with simple centerpieces of local wildflowers. The room buzzed with conversation as business leaders, city officials, and community members mingled over coffee and dessert. Eli tugged at his tie, feeling slightly out of place in his best suit, the one he usually reserved for Sunday services. Maya sat beside him in a new purple dress, her braids tied with matching ribbons, carefully arranged by Mrs. Greer that afternoon. She couldn't stop fidgeting with excitement, her engineer's notebook clutched tightly in her hand. You look just fine, Deacon Ruth whispered from his other side, patting his arm. Stop fussing. At the head table, Victoria stood to approach the podium, elegant in a navy blazer and pencil skirt. The room quieted as she tapped the microphone. Her smile was warm, genuine, so different from the frustrated woman who'd first stepped into his garage months ago. Good evening, everyone, she began. Thank you all for being here tonight. We're gathered to celebrate something remarkable, how a single act of kindness can spark real change in a community. She gestured toward Eli's table. 3 months ago, my car broke down in what some people called the wrong part of town. But what I found there was exactly right. A skilled mechanic who put helping others above profit, a father teaching his daughter the value of hard work and compassion, and a community that refuses to be defined by its struggles. Maya beamed up at her father, who squeezed her shoulder gently. The pilot program with Carter's Garage has exceeded every metric we set. Victoria continued. Response times, customer satisfaction, vehicle maintenance costs, all better than our corporate benchmarks. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. She pulled a small sticky note from her jacket pocket, yellow, slightly worn at the edges. This was on Maya Carter's prayer wall the day I first visited their garage. It reads, "A safe garage for Dad. Sometimes the simplest prayers carry the most weight." Eli felt his throat tighten. He hadn't known she'd seen that. Today, I'm proud to announce that if our final metrics hold, Hail Dynamics plans to expand this program statewide. Victoria's voice carried clear and strong. We're looking at partnering with independent garages across every major city where we operate. This isn't just about vehicle maintenance. It's about investing in communities that have been overlooked for too long. Applause rippled through the room. Maya bounced in her seat, clutching her notebook tighter. Mr. Carter, Victoria said, would you and Maya please join me up here? Eli stood, straightening his tie one last time. Maya practically skipped beside him as they made their way to the podium. The spotlight felt warm on his face. This man, Victoria said, placing a hand on Eli's shoulder, reminded me that true leadership isn't about boardroom decisions. It's about seeing the humanity in every person we meet. Thank you, Eli, for showing us a better way. The applause was louder this time. Maya tugged on Victoria's sleeve, holding up her notebook with hopeful eyes. Victoria laughed, taking the worn notebook. "And what's this?" "My engineer's notebook," Maya said proudly. "I've been drawing all my ideas in it. Dad says you're the smartest business person he knows, so maybe you could sign it? Please?" Victoria opened the notebook carefully, smiling at the detailed sketches inside. Wind turbines, solar panels, and what looked like an electric car charging station. She pulled out her pen. "To Maya," she read as she wrote, "future engineer and innovator. Never stop dreaming big. Victoria Hale, CEO." Maya hugged the notebook to her chest, grinning so wide it looked like her face might split. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of handshakes and congratulations. Local business owners wanted to discuss the program's expansion. City council members who'd been skeptical of the pilot now crowded around to voice their support. Through it all, Maya stayed close to her father's side, occasionally opening her notebook to admire Victoria's signature. As the evening wound down, Eli and Maya stepped out into the crisp night air. Stars sparkled overhead, clearer than usual in the autumn sky. Maya skipped ahead, her dress twirling. "Did you hear that, Dad? Statewide. That means lots of other garages like ours, right?" Eli nodded, his chest full of quiet pride. "That's right, baby girl. And Miss Victoria said our numbers were the best. Better than their fancy corporate ones." She sure did. He caught up to her in a few strides, taking her small hand in his. "You know what that means? All that hard work we've been doing? It's paying off." Maya swung their joined hands as they walked to the car. "I knew it would. I put it on my prayer wall, remember?" Eli looked up at the stars, thinking of that little yellow sticky note in Victoria's pocket. Sometimes blessings came wrapped in broken-down cars and rainstorm. Sometimes they came in the form of a CEO who remembered where she came from and a daughter who never stopped believing in answered prayers. The night air carried the promise of good things ahead as they drove home, Maya humming softly in the passenger seat, her precious notebook safe in her lap. The piercing wail of sirens jolted Eli from his sleep. Red and blue lights flickered through his bedroom window, casting eerie shadows on the wall. Something was wrong, very wrong. His heart pounding, he grabbed his phone. 3 missed calls from Mrs. Greer. "Eli, the garage." Her voicemail crackled with urgency. "It's on fire." He bolted upright, fumbling for clothes in the dark. "Maya," he called out, his voice rough with sleep and fear. "Baby, wake up." Maya appeared in her doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, what's happening?" "We need to go. Now." He helped her into a sweater over her pajamas, grabbed his keys, and they rushed down the stairs of their small apartment. The night air hit them like a punch to the gut, thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning rubber. 2 blocks away, orange flames licked the sky where his garage stood. Eli's legs moved faster. Maya's hand clutched tightly in his. As they rounded the corner, the full horror came into view. 3 fire trucks were already on scene, their emergency lights painting the neighborhood in apocalyptic colors. Streams of water arced through the darkness, but the flames seemed to laugh at their efforts, dancing higher through the roof. "No, no, no." The word tumbled from Eli's lips like a broken prayer. Mrs. Greer rushed to them, wrapping Maya in her arms. "I called as soon as I saw it from my window," she said, her voice shaking. "It happened so fast, Eli. 1 minute everything was quiet then." Deacon Ruth arrived, still in her nightgown under a heavy coat. She took one look at Eli's face and gripped his arm. "Lord, be with us," she murmured. Eli could only watch, helpless, as firefighters battled the blaze. The garage door had partially collapsed, revealing glimpses of the inferno inside. Tools he'd collected over decades, diagnostic equipment bought with the pilot program advance, the children's artwork Maya had hung on the walls, all of it feeding the hungry flames. The fire chief approached, his face grave under his helmet. "Mr. Carter, we're doing everything we can, but the structure's compromised. Was anyone inside?" Eli shook his head numbly. "No. Locked up at 8, like always." Hours crawled by. The neighborhood gathered, offering silent support as they watched their community anchor burn. Around 3 a.m., the flames finally surrendered to the relentless water, leaving behind a smoking skeleton of Eli's dreams. Dawn crept in with cruel clarity, revealing the full extent of the devastation. The roof had partially caved in, windows were blown out, and everything inside was charred beyond recognition. The mural on the side wall, the one with Tasha's face, was streaked with soot and water damage. "Daddy?" Maya's small voice cracked. "My prayer wall." Eli pulled her close, unable to find words of comfort. The wall where she'd pinned her hopes and dreams was now a blackened ruin. The fire inspector moved methodically through the wreckage, taking photos and making notes. "Initial assessment points to electrical failure," he said, but his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Then Mrs. Greer's sharp voice cut through the morning air. "Eli, over here!" Behind the dumpster, partially hidden but clearly visible in the growing light, crude words had been spray-painted on the wall, racial slurs and threats, too ugly to repeat. The inspector photographed them without comment, but Eli saw him exchange a knowing look with the police officer on scene. "We'll file a report," the officer said, his tone flat, routine, but without witnesses or cameras. Eli's phone rang, his insurance agent. The conversation was brief and devastating. "Given the pending zoning changes and the nature of the incident, there may be coverage issues. We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation." Maya had found a partially burned sticky note near the entrance, its edges curled and black. Her small shoulders shook with sobs. Around 9, Victoria's name appeared on his caller ID. Eli stepped away from the crowd to answer, his throat tight. "Eli, I just heard." Her voice was strained, professional. "I'm so sorry, but given the circumstances, the board is insisting we pause the pilot program until this is resolved." The words hit him like physical blows. Everything they'd built, everything they'd hoped for, up in smoke, just like his garage. "I understand," he managed, though he didn't. "Not really. We need to assess the security implications, review our liability." She was using her CEO voice now, distant and formal. "Once the investigation is complete?" "Right," Eli cut her off, unable to bear more corporate speak. "Thank you for letting me know." He ended the call and stood there, surrounded by the ruins of his life's work. The morning sun climbed higher, highlighting the water damage, the collapsed roof, the hateful words on the wall. Behind him, he could hear Maya crying softly into Mrs. Greer's shoulder. The acrid smell of smoke still hung in the air, mixing with the morning dew. Fire hoses lay snaked across the wet pavement like fallen branches after a storm. A small crowd of onlookers had gathered behind the yellow police tape, their whispers carrying on the morning breeze. Deacon Ruth stepped up beside him, her presence solid and steady. She didn't offer empty words of comfort or try to find a silver lining. She simply stood with him, bearing witness to the destruction of more than just a building, the destruction of a dream that had just begun to take flight. The weight of what he'd lost pressed down on Eli's chest like a physical thing. The garage had been more than his livelihood. It was his father's legacy, his daughter's future, his community's anchor. Now it stood in ruins, and with Victoria's call, even the hope of rebuilding through the pilot program had crumbled to ash. The morning sun couldn't pierce the heavy gray clouds that hung over the charred remains of Eli's garage. Yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze, marking off the building like a crime scene. The acrid smell of smoke still clung to everything, making throats raw and eyes water. Eli stood at the edge of the tape, his shoulders slumped under the weight of his work jacket. The front wall was blackened, windows shattered from the heat. Water from the firefighters' hoses pooled in the parking lot, reflecting the devastation like dark mirrors. Maya sat on the curb nearby, carefully smoothing out the few sticky notes she'd managed to salvage from her prayer wall. Most had burned away to ash, years of hopes and dreams gone up in smoke. Her small fingers trembled as she tried to piece together a torn corner, her bottom lip quivering. "Watch your step there," a firefighter called out, picking his way through the debris. He carried a clipboard and wore a grim expression. "The structure's not stable. We'll need a full inspection before anyone can go inside." Eli nodded numbly. He'd been standing there for hours, watching investigators come and go. They'd found something behind the dumpster. Ugly words spray-painted in the darkness. The police had photographed it, but their shrugs told him all he needed to know about their expectations for justice. "Eli!" Deacon Ruth's voice came soft but steady behind him. She placed a warm hand on his shoulder, its familiar weight grounding him slightly. "Come sit with me a minute." He let her guide him to a nearby bench, his legs heavy. Ruth settled beside him, her presence solid and reassuring as always. She didn't rush to fill the silence with empty comfort or false promises. Instead, she reached for his hand and held it firmly. "I don't know if I can start over again," Eli whispered, his voice rough. Everything we built. Everything I wanted to give Maya. The Lord knows your heart, Ruth said quietly. She watched Maya arranging her saved sticky notes with careful determination. And that little girl? She's got your strength, Eli, more than you know. What if this is a sign? The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Maybe I was reaching too high, getting ahead of myself with all these plans and contracts. Ruth turned to face him fully, her eyes sharp with conviction. Now you listen to me, Eli Carter. The devil didn't burn down your garage because you were failing. He did it because you were succeeding. She squeezed his hand tighter, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. Let's pray together. Not for answers right now, but for strength to keep standing. Eli closed his eyes as Ruth's familiar cadence washed over him. She didn't pray with flowery words or showy declarations. Her prayer was simple, strong, and straight from the heart. Lord, we don't understand why this happened, she began, but we know you're here in the ashes with us. Give Eli your peace that passes understanding. Show him the next step when he's ready to take it. And Lord, protect his heart and Maya's through this valley. Amen. Maya wandered over as Ruth finished, clutching her rescued sticky notes to her chest. Dad? Her voice was small. Can we save any of them? Eli pulled her close, breathing in the lingering scent of smoke in her hair. I don't know, baby, but we saved these ones, didn't we? She nodded, carefully showing him the papers. One read, Help Daddy smile more. Another, Make our garage the best in town. The sight of her childish handwriting, still believing in possibilities, made his throat tight. Throughout the day, neighbors stopped by. Mrs. Greer brought coffee and sandwiches. Church members offered spare tools, temporary workspace, whatever they could think of. But Eli barely heard their kind words. His mind kept circling back to Victoria's phone call, how quickly the pilot program had been paused. All that talk of expansion, of statewide opportunities, gone up in smoke, just like Maya's prayer wall. As evening approached, Ruth insisted on taking Maya for the night. You need some quiet time, she said firmly. To think and pray. She can bunk with my granddaughter. Maya hugged him extra tight before leaving. We can make new sticky notes, she whispered. I still remember all my prayers. Now, in his silent kitchen, Eli sat with a cold cup of coffee, staring at Tasha's picture on the wall. Her smile seemed to ask questions he couldn't answer. What would she say about all this? Would she tell him to fight or to fold? The insurance papers lay scattered across the table, full of clauses and exceptions. The zoning notice sat on top like a final mockery. His phone showed missed calls from Victoria, but he couldn't bring himself to listen to the messages. Tasha's face watched him from the frame, forever caught in a moment of joy. She'd always believed in him, even when he doubted himself. But she'd never faced anything like this. Their dreams literally reduced to ashes, with hate painted on the walls. The sun had barely crept over the horizon when Victoria's heels clicked against the wet pavement outside Eli's garage. Her usual polished appearance was muted today, hair pulled back simply, minimal makeup, dark circles visible under her eyes. She carried only her phone and a small leather portfolio. The police tape rippled in the morning breeze as she ducked underneath it, careful not to snag her coat. The acrid smell of smoke still hung heavy in the air, mixing with the metallic scent of wet ash. Puddles from the firefighters' hoses reflected the gray morning sky, creating mirror-like patches across the buckled concrete floor. Eli stood in what remained of the office doorway, surveying the damage with tired eyes. His usually neat work shirt was wrinkled, as if he'd slept in it. Dark smudges of soot marked his hands and forearms. He didn't turn when Victoria approached, though his shoulders tensed slightly at the sound of her footsteps. I didn't expect to see you here, he said quietly, still looking at the ruins. Victoria paused a few feet away, taking in the full scope of the destruction. The walls were scorched black, tools lay scattered and rusted from the water, and the newly painted sign Maya had designed hung crooked and blistered from the heat. I couldn't stay away, she replied, her voice catching slightly. Not after. She opened her portfolio and carefully withdrew a small square of paper, its edges slightly singed. I need to return this. Eli finally turned. In her outstretched hand was one of Maya's sticky notes from the prayer wall, the one asking for a safe garage for her father. His expression tightened as he recognized it. You took this? He asked, not reaching for it. Victoria nodded, swallowing hard. That Saturday at the cookout, I thought? She shook her head. I thought it would remind me to do the right thing. Instead, I let fear of bad press and shareholder concerns override what I knew in my heart was right. She stepped closer, the note still extended. I was wrong to pause the pilot, Eli. Dead wrong. I let Owen's prejudices and corporate politics matter more than the truth. That you're exactly the kind of person we should be working with. Eli took the note carefully, as if it might crumble to ash like so much else had. His fingers traced Maya's careful handwriting. Pretty words don't rebuild a garage, he said. But there was more weariness than anger in his voice. No, they don't, Victoria agreed. She gestured to the ruins around them. But action can. I've spent the night making calls. Insurance adjusters, contractors, security companies. I'm prepared to put the full weight of Hail Dynamics behind making this right. Not just rebuilding, but better than before. Eli tucked the note into his shirt pocket, right over his heart. Why? What changed? Victoria moved to stand beside him in the doorway, their shoulders almost touching as they looked out at the destruction. I grew up not far from here. Did you know that? My father worked at the steel mill until it closed. He always said you could tell a person's character by how they treat others when no one's watching. She turned to face him fully. That night in the rain, when my car broke down, you could have charged me triple and I would have paid it. Instead, you barely took enough to cover parts. You put my emergency ahead of your own needs, gave me your last umbrella, made sure I got where I needed to go safely. That's who you are when no one's watching, Eli. And now everyone's watching, he said quietly. Yes. Victoria's voice grew firm. Which means we have a chance to do more than just rebuild one garage. We can show other companies that investing in communities like this isn't charity, it's good business. That talent and integrity exist everywhere, if we just look past our biases and really see people. She pulled out her phone, showing him a draft press release. I want to announce a full investigation into the fire, additional security measures for all our partner locations, and a commitment to expanding the pilot program to other neighborhoods once we get you back up and running. But, she paused, meeting his eyes directly, only if you're willing to trust me again. I know I don't deserve it. Eli was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. The morning light had grown stronger, illuminating the sincere concern in her expression. Finally, he spoke. This can't just be about good PR for Hail Dynamics. These are people's lives, their dreams, my daughter's future. I know, Victoria said softly. That's why I'm here at dawn, talking to you first. Before any announcements or press releases, whatever we do next has to start with making things right between us. Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out Maya's sticky note again. He smoothed it carefully between his fingers, then held it up so they could both see it in the morning light. Maya never stopped believing her prayer would be answered, he said. Even after the fire, she kept saying God would find a way. Victoria felt tears prick at her eyes. Maybe he did, through all of us, you, me, this whole community. If we're brave enough to try again, it won't be easy, Eli warned. There are people who don't want this garage here, who don't want change. Then we'll prove them wrong, Victoria said firmly. Together, not as CEO and mechanic, but as partners trying to build something that matters. Eli studied the note one last time, then carefully returned it to his pocket. All right, he said quietly, but we do this right. No cutting corners, no PR spin, just honest work and real change. Victoria nodded solemnly. I promise. The sun had risen fully now, its rays catching the water droplets still clinging to the broken windows. They sparkled like tiny points of hope in the midst of destruction, promising that even from ashes, something new could grow. Corporate justice. Victoria sat behind her desk, her fingers drumming against a manila envelope. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. Her usual stack of reports lay untouched, her coffee gone cold. The door opened, and Owen strode in with his characteristic confidence, straightening his tie. Victoria, good morning. I've got those risk assessment numbers you wanted for the Briggs transition. Sit down, Owen. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. He paused, catching something in her tone that made his smile falter. Slowly, he lowered himself into one of the leather chairs facing her desk. I had an interesting conversation with Mrs. Greer yesterday, Victoria said, opening the envelope. Fascinating woman, retired school teacher. She's lived in that neighborhood for 50 years and knows every inch of it, including where all the security cameras are. Owen's face remained neutral, but his fingers tightened slightly on the armrests. I'm not sure I follow. Victoria spread several grainy photographs across her desk. They showed a man in dark clothing approaching Eli's garage late at night. The timestamps matched the fire. This is Derek Winters. He works for a demolition company that subcontracts exclusively with Briggs Automotive. Want to explain that? Anyone can hire a contractor, Owen said smoothly. If someone from Briggs was involved in this unfortunate incident, I'm sure they acted without corporate knowledge. Victoria pulled out another photo, this one showing Owen himself meeting with the same man behind a restaurant 3 days before the fire. Really? Because this looks an awful lot like corporate knowledge to me. The color drained from Owen's face. Victoria, let me explain. I've already heard the explanation, she cut him off. Mrs. Greer had more than pictures. She had audio from the cafe next door's security system. Something about clearing out the undesirables and making way for progress. Ring any bells? Owen leaned forward, dropping his voice. Look, you have to understand. That neighborhood is dragging down property values. Briggs offered a clean solution. They get the contract. We get better optics. Everybody wins. Everybody except the actual human beings who live and work there, Victoria said, her voice sharp. The families who've been there for generations. The small business owners like Eli who are the backbone of that community. They're not our demographic, Owen insisted. Our shareholders expect us to operate legally and ethically, Victoria snapped. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Security is on their way up, Owen. So are the police. The DA is very interested in the connection between Briggs, the demolition company, and that convenient zoning change that was pushed through last month. Owen's face twisted. You're making a mistake. This is business, Victoria. Just business. No, she said, standing as 2 security guards entered the office. This was arson. This was conspiracy. This was an attack on people's livelihoods and lives. And it stops now. You can't do this, Owen said, his polished veneer cracking as the guards approached. I built half the relationships this company depends on. Consider them officially dissolved, Victoria said. She nodded to the guards. Please escort Mr. Briggs out. The police are waiting in the lobby. Owen struggled to his feet, straightening his jacket with trembling hands. You'll regret this. The board won't stand for. The board has already seen the evidence. Victoria cut him off. They're convening an emergency session this afternoon to formally terminate you and cancel all contracts with Briggs Automotive. Your credentials have been revoked, and IT is securing your accounts as we speak. The guards moved to either side of Owen. Through the glass walls of the office, Victoria could see other employees trying not to stare as their COO was led toward the elevators. In the distance, police sirens grew louder. Owen stopped at the door, turning back one last time. We could have been great together, Victoria. We could have transformed this company. Victoria met his gaze steadily. We already are transforming it, Owen, just not the way you planned. She watched as the guards guided him out, his shoulders finally slumping in defeat. Through her window, she saw police cars pulling up to the building's entrance. Mrs. Greer's words from yesterday echoed in her mind. Sometimes doing right isn't about what's smart for business. It's about what lets you sleep at night. Victoria gathered the evidence photos, tucking them back into the envelope for the DA. The sirens died away, replaced by the usual morning sounds of the office. She picked up her phone and dialed Eli's number. It was time to make things right. Down below, Owen was led through the lobby in handcuffs, past the giant corporate logo he'd helped design. The automatic door slid open, and the morning light caught his face one last time before he disappeared into the waiting police car. The wooden pews of the fellowship hall creaked under the weight of so many bodies. Every seat was taken, with people standing shoulder to shoulder along the walls. Camera flashes popped like lightning bugs in the warm afternoon light filtering through the stained glass windows. The air hummed with whispered conversations and the rustle of notepads. Deacon Ruth stood at the podium, her weathered hands gripping its edges. We gather today not just as a community, but as witnesses to what happens when truth meets grace. Her voice carried to every corner of the hall. I'd like to welcome Miss Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Dynamics. Victoria rose from her seat in the front row, smoothing her simple navy dress. Gone were the power suits and corporate polish. Her heels clicked softly on the hardwood floor as she approached the podium. She placed her notes down but didn't look at them. 3 months ago, I drove through this neighborhood for the first time, she began, her voice steady but humble. My car broke down, and I met a man who showed me kindness when he had every reason not to. Eli Carter fixed my car that day, but he did something else too. He reminded me of where I came from. In the third row, Eli sat with Maya beside him, her small hand clutched in his. His face remained carefully neutral, but his eyes never left Victoria. I grew up in a town like this, Victoria continued. My father worked with his hands, just like Eli does. Somewhere along the way, climbing the corporate ladder, I forgot what that meant. I forgot that real progress isn't about replacing communities, it's about lifting them up. She paused, taking a deep breath. When Eli's garage burned, I made a terrible mistake. Fear of bad press and shareholder reaction led me to pause our pilot program instead of standing beside this community. I chose corporate caution over human decency. Mrs. Greer, sitting near the front, nodded slowly, her face stern but her eyes kind. The evidence we uncovered about the fire's true cause doesn't excuse my reaction to it. Today, I'm here to do more than apologize. I'm here to make things right. Victoria gestured to a series of boards that had been set up beside the podium. An aide pulled off the covering, revealing professional displays with graphs, photos, and bold text. I'm announcing the Carter Initiative, Victoria said, her voice growing stronger. Hail Dynamics is committing $50 million over 5 years to support minority-owned automotive businesses in underserved communities across the country. This includes direct grants, training programs, and guaranteed service contracts. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Several reporters began scribbling furiously. But that's just the start, Victoria continued. Here in this community, we're rebuilding Eli's garage, not just as it was, but as a flagship training center for the entire program. The property deed will be protected through a community land trust, ensuring it can never be pushed out by development. Maya bounced in her seat, tugging at her father's sleeve. Eli squeezed her hand, his throat working as he swallowed hard. Additionally, we're establishing the Tasha Carter Memorial Scholarship. Victoria's voice softened as she looked directly at Maya. A full ride for engineering studies, available to students from this community who show the same spirit of innovation and service that I've seen in Maya Carter. Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she buried her face in her father's arm. Around them, several church members reached over to pat their shoulders. Victoria gripped the podium tighter. Words are easy, promises are cheap, but change, real change, requires action, accountability, and most importantly, it requires us to face our failures honestly. She turned to look directly at Eli. Mr. Carter, I failed you in this community. I am deeply, truly sorry. The silence in the hall was absolute. Even the reporters had stopped writing, all eyes moving between Victoria and Eli. Slowly, Eli stood. Maya rose with him, still holding his hand. He walked to the podium, his work boots quiet on the floor, and for a moment, he just looked at Victoria. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. My late wife, Tasha, he began, his voice rough with emotion. She used to say that true forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to build something new from the broken pieces. He cleared his throat. What happened to our garage hurt? The pause and support when we needed it most. That hurt too. But standing here today, I see someone who's not just saying sorry, but working to change the system that caused the hurt in the first place. Eli extended his hand to Victoria. On behalf of this community, we accept your apology, and we look forward to building something new together. Victoria took his hand, tears gleaming in her eyes. Behind them, Maya slipped between them and wrapped her arms around both adults. A camera flash caught the moment. CEO, mechanic, and little girl, linked in an unlikely circle of grace. The fellowship hall erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, some wiping tears, others embracing their neighbors. Deacon Ruth's voice rose above the noise in a prayer of thanksgiving, but most of her words were lost in the standing ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the old church. The rumble of construction equipment broke through the early morning quiet. Yellow bulldozers and cement trucks lined the street outside Eli's garage, their diesel engines humming in the crisp air. Workers in hard hats clustered around blueprints spread across a folding table, while others marked measurements on the ground with bright orange spray paint. Eli stood at the edge of his property, coffee cup warming his hands, watching as the crew began clearing away the fire-damaged sections of the building. Maya bounced on her toes beside him, clutching her engineer's notebook and a fresh pack of colored pencils, a gift from Victoria. Look, Dad, they're using the crane just like in my textbook, Maya pointed as the massive machine swung into position. She quickly sketched the scene, her pencil flying across the paper. Mrs. Greer walked over from her house next door, carrying a tray of fresh muffins. My word, I haven't seen this much excitement on our street since they repaved it in '82. She handed out breakfast to the grateful workers, who tipped their hard hats in thanks. The site supervisor, a woman named Carmen, approached with a thick envelope. Mr. Carter? These just came from Hale Dynamics legal team. The property deed protections you requested, all signed and notarized. Eli took the envelope with careful hands. Inside were documents ensuring his garage couldn't be bought out or rezoned without his explicit consent. The papers even included provisions for Maya to inherit the property. His throat tightened as he remembered Victoria's promise. This time, we're doing it right. Throughout the morning, delivery trucks arrived one after another. New diagnostic computers, professional-grade tool sets, and 2 state-of-the-art vehicle lifts were carefully unloaded. Each piece of equipment represented a level of quality Eli had only dreamed of owning. "Where do you want the lifts installed, boss?" asked Marcus, one of his apprentices from church. The young man had shown up early, eager to help with the rebuilding. "Let's put them here and here." Eli marked the spots on the concrete floor. "That'll give us good workflow between bays." He'd spent hours planning the layout, determined to make the most of this second chance. Jerome, his other apprentice, arrived with paint samples and rollers. "Got the colors you picked, Mr. Carter. That deep blue for the exterior and white for inside, right?" Eli nodded, remembering how Maya had helped him choose. The blue matched the color of Tasha's favorite dress, though he kept that detail to himself. As the day progressed, the transformation became more visible. New walls rose where charred ones had stood. Fresh concrete was poured for an expanded parking area. The apprentices worked alongside professional painters, coating the interior walls in clean, bright white. Maya moved between the workers, her notebook filling with drawings and observations. She interviewed the electricians about their wiring plans and peppered the plumbers with questions about pipe layout. Each worker treated her curiosity with patience, explaining their trades to the eager 9-year-old. "Baby girl, you're going to know more about building a garage than I do." Eli chuckled as she showed him her detailed notes. "That's the point, Dad. When I'm an engineer, I need to understand everything." She flipped to a new page, already sketching the ventilation system being installed. Around mid-afternoon, Deacon Ruth arrived with a church volunteer crew. They tackled the landscaping, planting flowers, and laying fresh mulch around the property's edges. The sight of so many neighbors working together made Eli's chest swell with gratitude. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," Deacon Ruth said, wiping sweat from her brow. "Sometimes through broken-down luxury cars." As evening approached, the workers began packing up their equipment for the day. The property was transformed, not yet finished, but well on its way. The new garage stood proud and sturdy, its blue exterior gleaming in the setting sun. Eli walked through the space, boots crunching on sawdust. The fresh paint smell mixed with the earthy scent of new lumber. Overhead, modern LED lights cast a bright, clean glow across the workspace. The new lifts stood like sentinels, ready for their first vehicles. Maya trailed behind him, adding final notes to her journal. "Dad, look!" She held up a detailed drawing of the garage, complete with measurements and labels. "I made a blueprint of our new shop." "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Eli pulled her into a side hug, careful not to smudge her artwork. Through the open bay doors, the evening light painted long shadows across the newly poured concrete floor, carrying the promise of tomorrow's work and all the days to follow. Training days. The garage hummed with activity as Eli stood before a small group of eager apprentices gathered around a fleet van's open hood. Morning light streamed through the new skylights, glinting off the polished tools hanging on freshly painted walls. The space smelled of coffee, motor oil, and possibility. "Now these electric fleet vans are different from what you might be used to," Eli explained, pointing to the complex array of components. "See this connection here? It's specific to Hale's models. You've got to be extra careful with the voltage readings." Marcus raised his hand. "Mr. Carter, is that why we need the special diagnostic tablet?" "Good question." Eli picked up one of the new tablets provided by the Carter Initiative. Its screen displayed detailed schematics of the vehicle's systems. "These tablets connect directly to the van's computer. They'll tell you exactly what's wrong, but," he paused for emphasis, "you can't rely on technology alone. You need to understand what you're looking at." The 6 apprentices nodded, scribbling notes. They were a diverse group. 2 women, 4 men, ranging from barely 20 to mid-40s. Each had been carefully selected through the initiative's program, which prioritized training people from underserved communities. "Remember what I always say," Eli prompted. "Tools are only as good as the hands that hold them," they chorused, making him smile. At the back of the garage, what used to be storage space had been converted into a small classroom. Whiteboards covered one wall, displaying detailed diagrams and maintenance schedules. Chairs with attached desks faced a demonstration engine mounted on a stand. Training manuals, both digital and printed, filled a new bookshelf. Sarah, a former military mechanic like Eli, raised her hand. "Could you show us that alternator replacement technique again, the one you used when Ms. Hale's car broke down?" "That's actually a perfect example of what I'm talking about," Eli said, grabbing a wrench. "Sometimes you've got to improvise, even with all this fancy equipment. Gather round." As he demonstrated the technique, the shop's front door chimed. Victoria Hale walked in, dressed more casually than usual, in slacks and a blazer. She carried 2 paper cups from the local coffee shop. The apprentices straightened up, but Eli kept working. "See how the bracket needs just a quarter turn? That's the trick to—" "Don't stop on my account," Victoria said, settling onto a nearby stool. She set one of the coffees on Eli's workbench and watched with genuine interest. Eli continued the lesson, showing how to quickly diagnose and repair common issues. He moved naturally between the demonstration vehicle and the whiteboard, years of hands-on experience flowing into clear instruction. The apprentices asked sharp questions, and he answered each one with patience and practical examples. After the demonstration, the group broke into pairs for practice. Tools clinked against metal as they worked, their conversation a mix of technical terms and encouraging words to each other. Victoria approached Eli, gesturing at the transformed space. "When we planned the initiative, I never imagined it would look like this. You've turned it into a real training center." Eli wiped his hands on a shop rag. "Had to. These folks deserve more than just a job. They need the skills to build careers." He picked up the coffee she'd brought. "Thanks for this. How many have you trained so far?" "This is the 3rd group. First 2 are already working in shops across the state. Marcus there." He nodded toward the young man helping a teammate. "He's showing real promise. Might make him my assistant trainer soon." They watched the apprentices work for a moment. Through the open bay doors, the sound of scaffolding being assembled caught their attention. Artists were preparing to continue work on the new mural outside. "Want to take a look?" Eli asked. They stepped out into the warm air. The mural was taking shape on the garage's exterior wall, half finished but already striking. The original tribute to Tasha remained at the center, her nurse's uniform detailed in soft blues and whites. Around her, new figures were being added. Eli teaching a group of mechanics, Maya with her wind turbine, community members working together. Victoria sipped her coffee. "It tells quite a story." "The whole neighborhood does," Eli replied. "Always has. Now maybe more people will see it." Inside, they could hear Marcus explaining a repair technique to his partner, his voice confident and clear. The tools clinked, an engine turned over successfully, and applause broke out. "You know," Victoria said, "when my car broke down that day, I thought I was just getting a repair." Eli smiled. "Funny how things work out sometimes." He gestured to the scaffolding. "Artists say they'll finish the mural by end of next week. You should come by for the unveiling." "I'd like that." Victoria checked her watch. "I should head back to the office." "Keep up the good work, Mr. Carter." "Always do, Miss Hale." She walked to her car. Not the same luxury sedan from that rainy day, but a new electric model from her company's fleet. As she drove away, Eli turned back to the garage, where his apprentices waited, ready to learn more from the mechanic who had turned an act of kindness into something larger than himself. A promise for tomorrow. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the kitchen windows as Eli sorted through the day's mail at the counter. Bills, advertisements, and a thick white envelope addressed to Miss Maya Carter in formal lettering. His heart skipped when he saw the Hale Dynamics logo in the corner. "Maya," he called out, his voice carrying through their small house. "Come here, sweetheart, there's something for you." Maya bounded in from the living room where she'd been working on homework, her socked feet sliding on the linoleum floor. "What is it, Dad?" "Got a pretty important-looking letter here with your name on it." He held up the envelope, watching her eyes grow wide. Maya reached for it with careful hands, as if it might disappear if she moved too quickly. "It's from Miss Victoria's company." She traced the embossed logo with her finger. Well, go on, Eli encouraged, leaning against the counter. Open it up. Maya slid her finger under the flap, taking extra care not to tear anything. She pulled out several crisp pages, unfolding them with reverence. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, and suddenly she gasped. Dad! She thrust the papers toward him, bouncing on her toes. Dad, look! Eli took the papers, adjusting his reading glasses. The letter was printed on heavy paper, with gold letterhead. Dear Miss Carter, in recognition of your exceptional promise in engineering and mathematics, Hale Dynamics is pleased to offer you a guaranteed full scholarship to the engineering program of your choice upon completion of your high school education. He had to pause, blinking hard against the sudden moisture in his eyes. The letter went on to detail the terms: full tuition, books, room, and board, everything she would need to pursue her dreams. Baby girl, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Do you understand what this means? Maya was already spinning in circles, her arms spread wide. I can be an engineer, just like I wanted, just like Miss Victoria. She stopped spinning and launched herself at her father, wrapping her arms around his waist. Dad, I can really do it. Eli hugged her tight, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. He thought of all the nights he'd worried about her future, about how he'd managed to give her the opportunities she deserved. Now here it was, a promise in writing, a door thrown wide open. Your mama would be so proud, he managed, his throat tight. So proud of her brilliant girl. Maya squeezed him harder. She is proud, Dad. I know she is. She's watching from heaven and doing her happy dance too. That broke him. A tear slipped down his cheek as he laughed, imagining Tasha indeed dancing with joy, just as Maya was doing now. Their daughter had inherited that same irrepressible spirit, that ability to light up a room with her enthusiasm. We need to frame this, Maya declared, pulling back and carefully smoothing the letter. Can we frame it, Dad, please? Of course we can, sweet pea. He wiped his eyes quickly. I think I've still got that nice frame your Aunt Jenny gave us for Christmas in the hall closet. They retrieved the frame together, and Maya insisted on positioning the letter just right behind the glass. Eli helped her hang it on her bedroom wall, right next to her future engineer poster and her science fair ribbons. Perfect, Maya said, stepping back to admire it. She yawned suddenly, the excitement of the day catching up with her. Looks like somebody's ready for bed, Eli observed, checking his watch. It's been quite a day. Maya didn't even protest, which told him just how tired she was. She changed into her favorite star-patterned pajamas while Eli turned down her bed. When she climbed in, he tucked the covers around her just like he had when she was smaller. Dad? Maya asked sleepily, as he smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Yes, baby? Do you think I'll be a good engineer? Eli smiled down at her, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. I think you'll be the best engineer anyone's ever seen. You've got your mama's brains and determination, and you've already got more knowledge about machines than most grown folks I know. Maya smiled back, her eyes already drooping. I'm going to make things that help people, just like you do. I know you will. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams, my brilliant girl. Sweet dreams, Dad, she murmured, snuggling deeper into her pillow. Eli stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his daughter drift off to sleep. The framed letter caught the last rays of sunset through her window, seeming to glow with promise. Both their faces held peaceful smiles. Daughter's dreams, once seeming so far out of reach, now secured in writing on her bedroom wall. The late afternoon sun painted the neighborhood in warm golden hues as people gathered in front of Eli's rebuilt garage. Folding chairs lined the small parking lot, filled with familiar faces from church, longtime customers, and folks who'd supported them through everything. The smell of fresh paint lingered in the air, mixing with the aroma of Mrs. Greer's famous lemon cookies arranged on a card table nearby. Victoria stood quietly at the back of the crowd, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, watching the scene unfold with genuine warmth in her eyes. The transformation of the garage was remarkable, gleaming new equipment visible through the open bay doors, fresh paint everywhere, and the crown jewel, a massive mural covering the entire side wall. The artist, a local painter named Jerome, had worked for weeks to get every detail right. He'd interviewed old-timers, studied photographs, and spent hours with Eli and Maya to capture not just faces, but the spirit of the place. Now, covered by a large cloth, the mural waited for its big reveal. Eli fidgeted with his collar, uncomfortable being the center of attention. He wore his best shirt, pressed blue cotton that Maya had insisted on, and stood near the podium they'd set up. Maya practically vibrated with excitement beside him, her braids bouncing as she kept glancing at the covered wall. Mrs. Greer made her way to the front, her cane tapping steadily on the concrete. Despite her arthritis, she stood straight and proud at the microphone, adjusting her glasses as she looked out over the crowd. The chatter died down naturally. Everyone knew when Mrs. Greer spoke, you listened. Some folks say progress means forgetting, she began, her voice clear and strong. They want to tear down the old to make way for the new. But real progress? Real progress remembers where it came from. She gestured to the covered wall. This mural tells our story. Not just one family's story, but all of ours. She turned slightly, nodding to Jerome. He and his assistant grasped the edges of the cloth. When Tasha Carter worked at the clinic, she never turned anyone away. When the flood came 10 years ago, she organized medical supplies from this very garage. And now? Mrs. Grier's voice softened with emotion. Now her husband and daughter carry that same spirit forward. The cloth fell away in one smooth motion, and a collective gasp rose from the crowd. The mural was stunning in its detail and vibrancy. 3 figures stood life-sized in the center. Tasha in her nurse's scrubs, one hand extended in welcome. Eli in his work clothes, holding a wrench and wearing his characteristic gentle smile. And Maya, clutching her engineering notebook, her face bright with possibility. But it wasn't just their portraits. Behind them, the mural showed scenes from the neighborhood's history. The old church that had sheltered families during storms, the first black-owned businesses that had opened on the street, children playing double dutch, elderly folks in rocking chairs telling stories. All of it flowing together in a river of memory and hope. Look closely, Mrs. Greer continued, her voice thick with pride. Every face here is someone who helped build this community. Every scene tells a story of how we've lifted each other up. She pointed to various sections, naming names, recounting tales that made people nod and murmur in recognition. Cameras clicked and flashed as reporters captured the moment. The local news station had set up their equipment, their reporter standing ready for interviews. But Eli barely noticed any of it. His eyes were fixed on Maya, who had walked up to stand in front of the mural. She reached out, touching the painted image of her mother gently. Then she looked at her own portrait, then her father's. The artist had captured something profound in how the 3 figures related to each other. Tasha's legacy of care flowing through Eli's steady presence and into Maya's bright future. The sunlight caught Maya's face as she beamed at her painted self, and for a moment, Eli saw double. His little girl and the young woman she was becoming, both present in that single radiant smile. His chest felt too full, remembering all the nights she'd added prayers to her wall, all the times she'd insisted things would work out. Mrs. Greer was still speaking, but now she was talking about the Carter Initiative, about how one act of kindness had sparked a change bigger than anyone could have imagined. She spoke about how the mural would remind everyone that real progress didn't mean erasure, it meant building on foundations of love and community. The crowd broke into applause as she finished. People began to mill around, taking photos, pointing out details in the mural, sharing memories. But Maya stayed rooted in her spot, looking up at the 3 faces that meant everything to her. Eli moved to stand beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She leaned into him without taking her eyes off the mural. "Dad?" she whispered. "Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" Eli swallowed hard, remembering Tasha's laugh, her determination, her way of seeing the best in everyone. He looked at their portraits, at how the artist had somehow captured the connection between all 3 of them, painted in colors that seemed to glow with inner light. "Baby girl," he said softly, "she always was proud of us, and she always will be." The cameras kept flashing around them, documenting the moment for news stories and archives. But father and daughter stood quietly together, bathed in the warm light of the setting sun, their painted selves watching over them with eyes full of promise. The smell of Mrs. Greer's lemon cookies wafted through the air as people lined up for refreshments. Someone started playing music from a portable speaker, old gospel tunes that had Deacon Ruth swaying in her seat. The neighborhood was alive with celebration. But here, in this small space between reality and art, Maya and Eli shared a moment of perfect understanding with the painted figure of Tasha, their past and future connected in strokes of vivid color on the wall of a garage that had become so much more than just a place to fix cars. The morning sun streamed through the newly installed windows of Eli's garage, casting long rectangles of light across the polished concrete floor. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the familiar notes of motor oil and rubber. Everything gleamed. The lifts, the tool chests, even the waiting area furniture still wrapped in protective plastic. Eli stood in the doorway of his office, taking it all in. The space felt both familiar and completely new, like putting on a carefully tailored version of his favorite work shirt. His fingers traced the edge of the new sign on his door. Eli Carter, head trainer, Carter Initiative. The words still made his heart skip a beat. Maya sat at the front desk, carefully arranging pins and clipboards. She'd insisted on coming in early to help set up for the first official day, wearing her junior manager badge with solemn pride. She'd created a detailed checklist for opening procedures, complete with little boxes to tick off. "Time check, Dad," she called out, tapping her watch. "First appointment in 20 minutes. The two apprentices, James and Marcus, were already doing their morning safety checks, moving through the bay with practiced efficiency. They wore crisp new uniforms with the garage's logo, Maya's design, featuring a wrench and a rising sun. "Looking sharp, fellows," Eli said, walking through to inspect their work. He adjusted a gauge here, tweaked a setting there, but mostly nodded in approval. These young men had learned fast, and their eagerness showed in every careful movement. At precisely 8 o'clock, the phone rang. Maya answered with the new greeting they'd practiced. "Carter Automotive Services, Maya speaking. How may we help you today?" Her professional tone made Eli smile. She sounded just like her mother used to when answering calls at the clinic. The familiar rumble of a diesel engine approached outside. Through the open bay door, Eli saw a pristine Hail Dynamics delivery van pulling up, right on schedule. The driver, an older man named Gerald, eased the vehicle carefully into position. "Welcome to the new digs," Eli called out, walking over to greet him. Gerald stepped down from the cab, whistling as he looked around. "Sure cleaned up nice, Mr. Carter," Gerald said, shaking Eli's hand. "Mighty nice indeed. Been looking forward to getting my regular maintenance done here instead of crossing town." Victoria appeared quietly in the doorway, connecting to the office suite, coffee cup in hand. She'd insisted on having a small workspace here to oversee the initiative's launch, though Eli suspected she mostly wanted to witness this moment. She caught his eye and gave a small nod, staying in the background. "James, you're up," Eli called. The young apprentice stepped forward, clipboard ready. "Show me what we discussed in training." James moved with confidence, walking Gerald through the inspection checklist. His voice was clear and professional as he explained each step of the maintenance process. Marcus prepared the bay, laying out tools with methodical precision. The morning light filled the space as they worked, highlighting the new equipment and the careful organization of every workspace. Through the windows, Eli could see neighbors walking past, some waving, others stopping to peer in with approval at the transformation. Victoria drifted closer, maintaining a respectful distance from the work area. Her presence was different now, not the wary CEO who'd first broken down in front of his shop, but a quiet ally watching her investment in the community bear fruit. The team moved like a well-oiled machine. James handled the inspection, Marcus assisted with the maintenance tasks, and Eli supervised, offering gentle corrections when needed. They'd practiced this choreography for weeks, refining their movements until everything flowed smoothly. Maya kept busy at the front, processing paperwork with careful attention to detail. She designed a filing system that even Victoria had praised for its efficiency. Every now and then, she'd glance up to watch the work in progress, her eyes bright with pride. The morning passed quickly. Gerald chatted with Maya while waiting, sharing stories about his routes and commenting on how the neighborhood had changed over the years. The smell of fresh coffee and Mrs. Greer's morning pastries, she'd insisted on providing refreshments for opening day, filled the waiting area. As the maintenance work concluded, James walked Gerald through the service report, explaining each item clearly. Marcus did a final safety check, and Eli performed the last inspection, signing off on the work with satisfaction. "How's she feeling?" Eli asked as Gerald climbed back into the cab. The engine purred to life, running smoother than when it had arrived. Gerald's face broke into a wide smile. "Like new, Mr. Carter. Like new." The van pulled out slowly, Gerald giving a friendly honk as he merged back into traffic. Eli watched it go, feeling a deep sense of rightness settle in his chest. This was more than just fixing engines. It was about building something lasting, something that mattered. James and Marcus were already cleaning up, resetting the bay for the next appointment. Maya updated the computer system with the completed service record, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The morning sun had climbed higher, and the day was properly underway. Victoria stepped forward finally, coffee cup empty. "Well done," she said simply, but her eyes were warm with approval. She'd seen exactly what she'd hoped for. Not just competent service, but genuine care and pride in the work. The sunset painted the sky in deep oranges and purples as the last customer's car pulled away from the garage. The day's work was done, but the warmth of success lingered in the air like the afterglow of the setting sun. Eli wiped his hands on a clean shop rag, his shoulders relaxed despite the long hours. Victoria's heels clicked on the concrete as she approached from her parked car. She'd changed from her usual business attire into something more casual, a simple blouse and slacks, but she carried herself with the same quiet confidence. "Quite a first day," she said, stopping beside him to watch the sky change colors. 7 fleet vans serviced, 3 oil changes, and 2 tire rotations. Eli nodded, a hint of pride in his voice. The apprentices handled themselves well. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The newly painted wall of the garage caught the last rays of sunlight, making the mural's color seem to glow. "You know," Victoria began, her voice softer than usual, "I've been thinking about that first day in the rain. I was so focused on getting to my next meeting, seeing this neighborhood as just another problem area to avoid." She shook her head. "I had no idea the broken-down car would teach me so much." Eli turned to face her, leaning against the garage door frame. "What do you mean? I thought I was being generous, offering that first contract. Like I was doing you some grand favor." Victoria laughed quietly. "But you showed me that real change isn't about one-time gestures or PR moves. It's about changing the whole system." "To be fair," Eli said, "I was pretty suspicious of your motives at first." "You had every right to be." Victoria's eyes traveled over the new security cameras, the improved lighting, the fresh paint. "But you taught me something important, that compassion has to be built into the foundation of how we do business, not just sprinkled on top when it looks good." Eli nodded slowly. "You know what meant the most? When you came back after the fire. When you admitted you were wrong about pausing the pilot." He adjusted his cap, a habit when talking about difficult things. "That took real courage." "I almost didn't," Victoria admitted. "Owen and the board were pushing hard for me to cut ties, protect the company's image. But I kept thinking about Maya's prayer wall, about that sticky note asking for a safe garage for her dad." She smiled. "Sometimes the simplest prayers show us what really matters." "Speaking of Maya," Eli said, "she's already planning her college engineering projects, that scholarship. It's going to change her whole future." "She earned it," Victoria said firmly. "Just like you earned this." She gestured to the garage. "Though I have to thank you too." "Thank me? For what?" "For believing in me even after I let you down. For showing me that second chances work both ways." Victoria's voice carried a weight of sincerity. "I grew up not far from here, you know. Spent years trying to polish away where I came from. But watching you, your dignity, your commitment to this community, it reminded me that success doesn't have to mean leaving your roots behind." Eli straightened up, keys jingling in his hand. "Well, sometimes roots need watering to grow stronger. What you did with the Carter Initiative, protecting these deeds from developers, creating real opportunities, that's not charity. That's justice." The first streetlight flickered on, casting a warm glow over the parking lot. Others followed, one by one, like stars appearing in the deepening dusk. "You know what Deacon Ruth told me?" Eli continued, moving to check the side door's lock. "She said sometimes God answers prayers by sending people who can fix broken systems, not just broken cars." Victoria smiled, following him as he made his final rounds. "Your Deacon Ruth sounds wise." "That she is." Eli tested the last lock. "Though she also says I need to learn to accept compliments better." "She's right about that too," Victoria chuckled. They reached the main entrance, where Maya's carefully lettered sign still hung in the window. "Grand Reopening Day." Below it, she'd added in smaller letters, "Thank you, Miss Hale." Eli inserted the key into the lock, the familiar motion carrying new meaning in this rebuilt space. Victoria stood beside him, both of them watching as the security system's little red light blinked on. "Ready for day 2 tomorrow?" she asked. "With better tools, trained apprentices, and guaranteed contracts?" Eli smiled. "I'd say we're ready for anything." The lock clicked shut, with a solid, reassuring sound. The garage stood quiet but full of promise in the growing darkness. A symbol of what could happen when kindness met opportunity. when business met compassion, when people chose to see beyond first impressions. More streetlights hummed to life around them, creating pools of warm light in the gathering dusk. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cars to fix, new apprentices to train. But tonight, they could pause and appreciate how far they'd come from that rainy afternoon, when a luxury sedan broke down in front of a small garage in a forgotten neighborhood. Maya stood in the freshly painted office of Carter's garage, her small hand smoothing out a bright yellow sticky note. The room still carried that clean, new paint smell, mixed with the familiar scents of motor oil and coffee that always reminded her of her dad. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the spotless windows, casting long rectangles of warmth across the pale blue walls. The designated prayer wall space looked enormous compared to the old one, a whole 8-foot section that her dad had specially prepared with a smooth finish. Maya had been saving this moment, waiting until everything felt just right to start the new collection of hopes and dreams. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small box, handling it with the kind of care usually reserved for precious jewels. Inside, protected by tissue paper, lay the original sticky note, slightly singed around the edges but still readable. A safe garage for Dad. Victoria had returned it to them after the fire, and Maya had kept it safe ever since. "That's the perfect place to start," came Mrs. Greer's voice from the doorway. The elderly woman walked in slowly, her cane tapping softly against the new flooring. She carried a small stack of colorful sticky notes in her free hand. Maya beamed at her. "Did you bring some prayers to add, Mrs. Greer?" "Sure did, honey. Your daddy's garage isn't just about fixing cars anymore. It's about fixing hopes, too." Mrs. Greer settled into one of the comfortable chairs Eli had placed against the wall. With careful movements, Maya centered the original note on the wall. She stepped back, tilting her head to make sure it was straight. The slightly darkened edges of the paper seemed to tell their whole story: the fire, the fear, and finally, the miracle that came after. The door chimed as Deacon Ruth entered, followed by 2 of the new apprentices, Marcus and James. They all carried sticky notes too. "We heard you were starting the new wall today," Marcus said, grinning. At 19, he was the youngest apprentice, but he already moved with the confidence of someone who knew he was exactly where he belonged. Maya's face lit up. "You all brought prayers too?" "Wouldn't miss it for anything," Deacon Ruth said, her warm voice filling the room. "This wall's going to hold all our dreams, just like the old one did." One by one, they began adding their notes. Mrs. Greer wrote about hoping more young people would learn trades. Marcus posted his prayer for becoming a certified mechanic. James added one about teaching his little brother everything he was learning at the garage. The door opened again, and more neighbors started filtering in. Word had spread through the tight-knit community that Maya was rebuilding her prayer wall. They came bearing sticky notes in every color imaginable, each one carrying a different hope, dream, or prayer. Miss Thompson from the bakery wrote about expanding her business. Mr. Rodriguez, whose taxi Eli had fixed countless times, added a note about his daughter's college dreams. Even little Sarah from next door contributed, her childish handwriting spelling out a wish for her mom to get better soon. Maya watched in wonder as the wall began to fill with color. Unlike her old wall, which had started as just her own prayers, this one was becoming a tapestry of the whole community's hopes from the very beginning. The original note at the center seemed to anchor all the others, reminding everyone that prayers really could be answered. "Look at that," came her dad's voice from behind her. Eli stood in the doorway, wiping his hands on a shop rag, his eyes soft as he took in the scene. "It's even better than before." Maya ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "It's everybody's wall now, Dad, just like the garage is for everybody." He squeezed her shoulder, both of them watching as more people added their notes. The apprentices helped Mrs. Greer reach higher spots, while Deacon Ruth read some of the prayers aloud to those who couldn't see them clearly. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, catching the wall just right. The colorful papers seemed to glow, their edges turning golden in the warm light. The slightly singed edges of Maya's original note in the center caught the light differently, making it stand out like a reminder of where they'd started and how far they'd come. Someone had opened the windows, letting in the sounds of the garage, the gentle whir of tools, friendly chatter, and occasional laugh. These familiar sounds mixed with the quiet murmur of people reading prayers aloud, sharing their hopes with each other, and adding new notes to empty spaces. Maya stood in the middle of it all, her heart feeling as warm as the sunlight that filled the room. The wall wasn't just paper and ink anymore. It had become something bigger, something that belonged to everyone who had ever believed in her dad's garage and what it stood for. The gathered community members stepped back one by one, admiring their collective work. The wall now held dozens of colorful notes, each one representing a different dream, a different story, a different prayer. But somehow, they all fit together perfectly, just like the community itself. The afternoon sun continued its slow dance across the wall, making the colors shift and change. Maya's original note remained at the heart of it all, its answered prayer, a reminder that sometimes the biggest dreams really do come true. The morning sun painted golden stripes across Carter's garage as Maya balanced on her tiptoes to reach the window. Her small hands carefully wiped the glass in circular motions, just like her dad had taught her. The familiar sounds of tools clanking and engines purring drifted through the open bay doors, mixing with laughter and casual conversation. Inside, Eli worked alongside his two apprentices, Marcus and James, their navy blue uniforms crisp and clean beneath the bright LED lights. The new lifts hummed smoothly as they raised a silver sedan, and the polished concrete floor gleamed like it had been waxed yesterday, because it had been. "Remember what I showed you about checking the timing belt?" Eli asked, pointing to the engine compartment. Marcus nodded eagerly, his young face serious with concentration. "Yes, sir, and we check for wear patterns here and here," Marcus replied, gesturing confidently. James watched intently, jotting notes in the small notebook he always carried. Maya finished with the window and stepped back to admire her work. The morning light streamed through without a single smudge to mar its path. She loved these early mornings at the garage, before the rush of customers began. Everything felt fresh and full of possibility. The bell above the door chimed softly as Victoria walked in, carrying a cardboard tray with 4 coffee cups. She wore a casual blazer over jeans, her new normal for garage visits, and her face brightened when she saw Maya. "Good morning, future engineer," Victoria called out, setting the coffee tray on the pristine front counter. "I brought your dad's favorite." "And hot chocolate for me?" Maya asked hopefully, already knowing the answer. Victoria never forgot. "Of course, with extra marshmallows, just how you like it." Victoria handed her the smallest cup, still warm through its protective sleeve. Eli emerged from under the hood, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "You're gonna spoil us with all these coffee runs," he said. But his smile was genuine as he accepted his cup. "Consider it fuel for success," Victoria replied, passing cups to Marcus and James. "The quarterly numbers came in yesterday. Your garage is outperforming every metric we set." The apprentices high-fived each other, and Eli's chest swelled with quiet pride. He'd worked hard to train them right, to build something that would last. Maya wandered over to her prayer wall, sipping her hot chocolate thoughtfully. The wall had grown over the past months, covered in a rainbow of sticky notes from community members, customers, and friends. Some asked for help with sick relatives or tough times. Others celebrated answered prayers, a new job, a healed relationship, a child's achievement. The original note still held its place of honor in the center, its edges slightly darkened from the fire, but its message clear and strong. "A safe garage for Dad." Maya traced its edges gently with her finger, remembering how scared she'd been when she first wrote it. She pulled a fresh sticky note from her pocket, bright green, her current favorite color. With careful letters, she wrote 2 simple words: "Thank you." She stood there for a moment, considering where to place it. "That's a powerful prayer too, you know," Victoria said softly, coming to stand beside her. "Gratitude matters just as much as asking." Maya nodded and pressed the note carefully beneath the original one, creating a perfect pair, the prayer and its answer. The morning light grew stronger, and Maya remembered her morning task. She skipped to the front door, where the open sign hung ready. With a practiced flip, she turned it to welcome the day's customers. Through the window, she could see the mural that stretched across the garage's exterior wall. The fresh paint still looked vibrant. Tasha's gentle smile watching over them all, now joined by portraits of Eli and Maya herself. The artist had captured them perfectly. Eli with his kind eyes and ready smile, Maya with her notebook and determined expression. From the work bay came the sound of Eli teaching, his voice patient and clear. "Now, listen to that engine. What's it telling you?" The motor purred smoothly, a testament to careful maintenance and skilled hands. Marcus and James leaned in, learning to hear the subtle languages of machinery. Victoria sat at the small desk in the corner, reviewing paperwork for the Carter Initiative's newest expansion. 6 more garages would join the program next month, each one a chance to change lives like theirs had been changed. The morning bustle of the neighborhood grew outside. Mrs. Greer opening her bakery next door. Deacon Ruth walking past on his way to visit church members. The familiar rhythm of their community coming to life. Maya returned to the prayer wall, holding her hot chocolate with both hands. She studied the collection of notes, some faded, some fresh, all of them pieces of hope shared in this space. The wall wasn't just paper and ink anymore. It was a testament to what could happen when people believed in each other. The bell chimed again as their first customer of the day entered. Maya heard her father's warm greeting, the friendly conversation that always preceded business. The apprentices moved with growing confidence, setting up for the day's work. Victoria gathered her things, ready to head to her office, but not before one last look at the prayer wall. Through the open bay doors, sunlight spilled across the mural outside, making the colors glow. The sound of the perfectly tuned engine filled the air, a steady, promising hum that seemed to say everything was exactly as it should be. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Eli Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.